Hi guys, it's Ben Heath from Lead Guru, and in this video I'm going to talk about Facebook ads targeting for local businesses. Okay, now there's lots of information online around Facebook ads targeting, which targeting options you should use, etc., but not a lot of that is dedicated towards local businesses. And local businesses obviously need to target in different ways to businesses that are advertising on Facebook on a national or international basis. And I'm not just talking obviously about the geographical area in which you target, because that's going to change, but because you're advertising to a much smaller area with a much smaller population base, that changes what targeting options you can use. You need to adjust your approach and do things differently. So this is a topic I've talked about a little bit in the past. I've sort of added it on to other targeting tutorials, but I thought I'd create a specific video for you guys running Facebook ads for local businesses, whether it's your own business or for your clients, and how I go about targeting. Because as an agency, we work with lots of businesses that are national and international, but we also work with lots of businesses that are local, or at least they're chains and they have lots of different locations that operate locally. So we've sort of worked out some stuff about how you need to go about doing Facebook ads targeting for local businesses, and that's what we're going to focus on in this video. Before I get into the steps, just want to quickly mention there's a free Facebook advertising related resource I'm going to tell you about at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. So the way I thought I would go through this is I'm going to quickly create an example Facebook ad campaign, going to get to the ad set level and then focus on the local targeting aspect, and then talk you through some of the elements that you need to focus on. So I'm just in an example Facebook ads account right now. I'm going to go ahead, as I said, and create a new example campaign. So let's just call this example campaign. I'm not going to worry about any of the other settings, right, guys? I've got all sorts of videos on my YouTube channel for things like campaign objectives and stuff. So if you're interested in all those, go and check that out. That's not what this video is about. I'm just going to call this example ad set. I'm not going to bother creating an ad for now because this video is about targeting. Okay. So we're at the campaign level here. I'm going to go ahead and click into the ad set level. Right, and now I'm going to scroll down to the target area. So you can see location has automatically been put in as the UK. So the first thing to do, which is probably fairly obvious but worth stating, if your business only operates on a local basis, you only serve customers within a certain geographical area, you need to enter that information and target that area. Don't leave the default, in my account here, being national or anything along those lines. Okay, very, very important, obviously. You don't want to be paying to be advertising in people that are the other side of the country that you can't work with. Okay, so if, for example, I was to advertise locally to me, I live in a small city in the UK called Cirencester, okay, which is in the west of England. Now, I've entered in the city itself, and I can choose the area around which my ads are going to be displayed. Okay, so if I zoom right in, let's get the right area here. You can see exactly where Cirencester is on a map, for those of you that haven't heard of it or aren't in the UK. So you can see exactly what geographical area you'd be targeting. So that's 25 miles. I might decide that actually people are probably only going to be willing to travel 15 miles to come work with me. You know, if you think about businesses like dentists or gyms, they probably need a smaller geographical area because people aren't going to be willing to travel to a gym that's further away. They're going to want to go to one that's fairly close. If you're advertising, you know, your services, it's normally going to be a service-based business, but if you're advertising something that's perhaps a little bit more niche, a little bit more unique, that there's not a huge amount of competition in your local area, so perhaps people will be willing to travel further, you know, something fairly specialist that usually fits the bill, then of course you can increase your target location, and you could add in extra locations. So let's say I've got 15 miles around Cirencester, perhaps had another office in Oxford, for example. No, I want Oxford in the UK. There are lots of Oxfords, unsurprisingly. And perhaps again, I'm happy with 15 miles there. So you can see I've got both radiuses there. Perhaps I had another, you know, location in Bath. Okay, so I could do the same. Again, I want Bath, UK, 15 miles. So you can see I've now got, if I zoom out slightly, I've now got these three sort of areas in the middle west, southwest of England that that could be targeted, and that's the first thing you need to do. What I would recommend when you're doing your target areas is go with the sort of the broader options that you do operate in. So don't go beyond where you operate. But if, for example, you know, you operate within an hour's drive of your place, but most of your customers are within half an hour drive of wherever you're based, I would go up to the hour mark, just because in general, Facebook ad campaigns perform better with larger audiences. So don't go beyond where you're willing to travel to, or you think customers are willing to travel to you, depending on what kind of localized business you have. But don't really fix in very narrow, go a little bit broader, because I said, Facebook ad campaigns in general perform better with larger audiences. And then one thing I'll quickly mention as well is you can exclude locations. So for those of you familiar with the UK, this is going to make a lot of sense. Here I've got, some fairly rural, smallish type cities in Cirencester, Oxford and Bath. But Bristol here is quite a large location. So what I could do, if I was like, oh, I don't want to compete with all the service providers in Bristol, that would be quite difficult. I can exclude Bristol as a location, add that in. You can see it's got a very wide area. But if I narrow that all the way down to, let's say, 10 miles, then you can see I'm almost in Bath there. Perhaps I would need to move the pin slightly because I'm just getting the edge of Bath. But you can see the sort of thing I'm talking about. In that case, what I might do is something like this. I might get rid of Bristol because I don't want to cut into Bath. I could drop a pin, and if I pop that pin, say, there, and I could make that plus, 12 miles. You can see I'm going to exclude most of the city of Bristol, but still keep the rest of the area. So there's all sorts of things you can do with the local targeting options to make sure that you're only left with the absolute areas that you want to target, okay? So that's location targeting. Now that's the first thing I want to talk about. The next thing that needs to be talked about is what else goes on down here, right? So once you've added in your location targeting, you need to have a look at your potential reach. So with these three options here, I've got a potential reach of 1.3 million. That's really quite healthy. I've created another video talking all about Facebook ads, audience size, and what you really want your audience size to be. I'll include a link to that in the description of this video. And that talks about where possible, I would like my target audience to be at least 250,000 people strong. I appreciate that's not always possible with local businesses in particular, and that's fine. But in general, I like it to be 250,000 person plus audiences. So that means that with this potential reach here, 1.3 million, I can afford to narrow some of these options down, okay? So for example, let's say that my market, depending on what I'm advertising, was mainly, let's say 30 to 50-year-old women. So let's edit the gender as well. Let's say that that's what in general. Okay, so I've narrowed that down, and that's brought my potential reach down all the way to 270,000 people, okay? So what that means is I don't now want to be adding in detailed targeting. I don't want to be adding in interests, demographics, behaviors, anything like that, okay? So let's say, for example, that most of my audience were small business owners, so I went with something like business page admins and added that in as a behavior. Our audience now has gone all the way down to 4,800 people. And this is where a lot of people go wrong with local targeting on Facebook, is they add in their age, their gender parameters, their detailed targeting, and they end up with an absolutely minuscule audience. You do not want to run a Facebook ad campaign to 4,800 people. So in this example, I need to go ahead and get rid of that. Yes, you may just want to work with small business owners, but for your Facebook ad campaign to run at all, you need to open up the targeting. Now, in your ad copy and your creative, you could make it clear that you are focusing on small business owners and those are the people that you attract. That's absolutely fine, but don't add it into your targeting options there. Now, if I was to get rid of some of these options, let's say I wasn't advertising in the Oxford area and I was not advertising in the Bath area, I can get rid of that because there's no need now. Just in Cirencester, you can see our audience is down to 120,000 people with this criteria. So that's probably narrower than I'd want to be. So if my audience was predominantly female, but let's say 20% of my customers were male, okay, well, I would add those back in. And that's gonna, I wanted to add that back into all. Yeah, so that's double the size of my audience. So that is something that we could potentially run. 240,000 is about small enough. Now, let's take it one step further. Let's say that I'm operating in Cirencester, but people are not going to be willing to travel 15 miles to come see me. A gym, for example, being a classic case. Okay, so let's say I narrow that down to just 10 miles. You can see that we're only got 57,000 people. That's smaller than I'd like it to be. So now what I'm going to do is open up the targeting criteria. So I might do 18 to 50, still only 94,000, still a bit small. I'm going to go all the way up to 65 plus. So you can see that in this area, 10 miles around Cirencester, which is quite a rural part of England, not a big population base, as you can see. There are just 140,000 Facebook users in this area, Facebook and Instagram users. Therefore, if I was just advertising to that area, I'm not going to add in any other targeting criteria for the vast majority of the campaigns and things like that I run. I'm just going to leave it open because of the audience size. And this is the really big difference that I see a lot of businesses that advertise locally get wrong and need to make, is that if your population area is quite small, which it is for a lot of local businesses, then you have to keep all this stuff down here very, very open. Okay. Now, of course, the opposite is true. You know, if I was, I didn't mean to click on that. If I don't want to click exclude either, let's go back to include. If I was advertising in London and my area of operation was the M25, which for those of you not in the UK is this line. You see where my cursor is going all the way around. It's like a motorway, goes round London. So 25 miles is probably a little bit large. So if I bring that to 20 miles, and I've worked with a lot of businesses that say that's a sort of a standard. It's basically you're advertising to Greater London and that's your area of operation. 20 miles, we're not far off there. It's probably a little bit big. But you can see we've got 8.6 million Facebook users in there. Now, in this case, we can be a lot more specific. So let's go back to our previous example. We can be 30 to 50, which is what we had set up. We just want to target women. What does that bring us down to? Still got an audience of 2 million here. Right, so this is where we can go ahead and add in some targeting criteria. What does business page admins bring us down to? Okay, so that brings us down to 35,000. So that one might be a little bit small, but what if I put in something like small business owners? 41,000, again, a little bit too small. But depending on your industry, there will be targeting options that you could you could use when you're advertising a much larger population base, even on a local basis, than when you're advertising a much smaller one. Okay, so those are probably a little bit too small, but if I wanted, there are other sort of business related interest targeting options you can find. And if you're trying to work out what sort of interest targeting, behavioral targeting options, demographic targeting options you should use, go ahead and check out another video of mine all about the free Facebook Audience Insights tool, where I show you exactly how I would do that. So you can see I've just come up with 2 options that don't work. I don't have any off the top of my head that I would use in this industry. Therefore, I would go into Audience Insights. I would find some options, link in the video description to show you exactly how to do that. Yeah, go ahead and watch that video if you want to know what interest you can put in. But basically, you can get away with more stricter, more specific targeting options. And you can have a play. So let's say small business owners was too small. With that, I could open this back up to all, perhaps 18 to 50. And then if I go with small business owners, 130,000. Still slightly on the small side, but you see the sort of thing I'm doing and what I'm getting at here. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. When you're advertising to local businesses, I would recommend not selecting the reach people beyond your detailed targeting criteria. I would recommend turning that on for national and international businesses, because there's a lot more scope to find other audiences of people that might be interested in things like that. In this case, I wouldn't, because most local businesses are not going to be used detailed targeting anyway, and I want to keep it quite specific. Okay, so that's just a quick note on the local targeting. Right, next thing I want to talk about is lookalike audiences. Now, again, I'll include a link in the video description to a tutorial all about how to create lookalike audiences. Lookalike audiences are absolutely fantastic. You take a previous customer list, something like that, you upload it to Facebook and say, Facebook, create me an audience out of people that are very similar to the people who have already bought from me. It's a fantastic targeting option, produces fantastic results. But when it comes to a local business, there are some adjustments you need to make. So when you create a lookalike audience, you can create a lookalike audience that contains from 1% all the way up to 10% of the population in that area. Okay, so if I was targeting a lookalike audience and I'm advertising a local business, I'm always going to go with the maximum, the 10%. And depending on when you're advertising, lookalike audiences may not be viable at all. Now, if we go back to, if I get rid of this targeting criteria, what have we got here? And I do the full age range. In the sort of Greater London area, we've got 8.6 million people. Yes, I could advertise to a 10% lookalike, which is likely to contain 860,000 people. Perfectly good audience size. I could probably even advertise to a 6% lookalike audience or something like that, because it's going to contain enough people. But if we go back to our Sirencester option, So let's pop this in here. And even if we leave it at 25 miles, you can see there's only 1 million people. If we go back down to, let's say, something like 15 miles, we've got 570,000 people. If that's my area of operation, I can't use a lookalike audience, because the maximum size lookalike audience I can use is 10% of the population of that area, which is going to contain roughly 57,000 people. There might be differences because lookalike audiences are weighted depending on geographical location. So it might be a good chunk bigger than that, but you know the sort of thing I'm talking about. And that's too small to run an ad campaign to. Okay, so if your population base isn't very large as a local business, you just can't use lookalike. In that case, you probably just want to use open targeting options, just your location, keep everything else blank. If you're advertising in a big city, big population base, or a wider area, yes, you can use lookalikes, but make sure they're larger lookalikes, higher percentage lookalikes, because the audience size issue is absolutely key. Okay, so hopefully that's been useful, talking about local targeting when it comes to Facebook advertising. Now, at the beginning of this video, I talked about a free Facebook advertising resource that I think you're going to find very interesting. I'll quickly talk about that now. And that's my Facebook Ads Mastermind group. So this is a free Facebook group to join. There'll be a link in the video description below. There's about 36,000 members in that group right now. Absolutely fantastic community, one of the biggest Facebook advertising communities there are. On Facebook. Yeah, it's full of experts. There's hundreds of posts every day with people asking questions, getting them answered by experts, agency owners like myself. Really good community to be in. I release free trainings in there every Wednesday. Completely free to join. Link in the video description. We'd love to have you in there. You get a lot of information and questions answered. So go ahead and do that. And yeah, hopefully we'll be talking soon. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please share it. Don't forget to comment below if you've got any questions. Comment below if you enjoyed it. That really helps me out. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, when you do that, make sure you turn on notifications. There'll be either a little bell that you can click or sort of a pop-up to say, would you like to be notified when I publish new videos? I'd recommend you do that so that you see the new videos that I'm publishing, both on Facebook advertising, SEO-related content, and things like that. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.